Hi folks, welcome to another week of GJ's Guitars. This week we're going to do a review on the Valeton, what is it? It's a GP-5 pedal. This pedal is absolutely amazing. I was a little bit skeptical if it was going to be any good actually, because it seems to be extremely good value for money, and a friend of mine bought one and said, oh, would you do a review on it? So I said, yeah, bring it over, and I've been playing around with it for a week now, so let's have a look at it. So let's get connected. So my guitar, obviously coming out of my guitar into the input on the pedal, then the output I have pushed into this line 6 just flat response speaker, and we've taken a line out of that into our recording gear, so it's just direct DI out. This speaker, you can put different speaker cabs onto it. I've left it totally flat, so it, you know, there is no effects, there's nothing on this speaker at all. It's all going to come from the pedal. So I have downloaded the app, which you can get in the App Store if you're an Apple person. If you're on an Android, I don't really know how those work because I'm an Apple man. So, but I know that is available on there. So you hit your app, which comes up on the screen. There it is. Load the software, and then you hit this connect button, which is on the screen, and then it finds the pedal. At this point, I'll just mention when you turn it on or you put the power into it, you sometimes need to put it into Bluetooth mode, which is that right button, which is worth knowing, so you can hold that down. And it goes into Bluetooth mode, then you connect to device, and you are off. And the first thing it loads up is a pedal called Great Pedal, which is a bit of a bold statement. So let's see if it's any good. Let's have a look at the software side of it. Now, one thing that I do think, which is a real good feature of this, is the layout in which they put the information on the screen. And I'm just going to explain that to you, because they've laid it out pretty similar to how you would have a pedal board, which is pretty good with your amp, which is a good way of showing how it works. So what you've got is when you hit the effect, it will come up with this screen. So it shows you the little pictures of kind of what the pedals are or what they look like, obviously what they've modeled them from. And then you can hit patch settings, and it shows you like you would have it on a pedal board, or your, you know, if you're trying to replicate a rig or something like that. So you've got your amp, cab, and some other features. So if I just go back to edit, okay, and I hit amp. So if I hit that, it gives me what the amp is. So you've got, this is a Foxy 30N clean. It's got the gain set at 28, the tone cut at 35, and the volume at 57. That's a preset. So you can see what that sounds like when you set them up. Now, something that I think's pretty good at this point is if I wanted to just use the effects of this rather than the amp modulation or the amp modeling, I could actually turn the amp off by a simple flick of a switch, which is just that. So I could turn my amp off and the amp is now off. So now I could just use the effects. So if I already had an amp that I like the sound of it clean, I could then just use my effects how I want, and I can add them in or put them in, whatever I want to do. Then if I don't want to use the amp and I want to just go into the computer, or I want to listen to it in my headphones, I can just turn the amp back on. And that's a very good feature. Cabs, you've obviously got tons of them. So if I go onto that and I can click that, and then it comes up with all these array of different cabs, which it would also do on the amps too. So hit that and you can change it. So at this point, you'll be changing the preset if I change it. So if I decided to change out of this one, I want to go for a Tweedy, I can change it and try that out. And then if I try to get out of that, so now if I go out of that and try and change into something else, it will tell me, do I want to save it or not? So that's quite good, because if I didn't want to change what I'd just done, I can cancel that and it will just set it back to a default setting, and then it changes to my new one. Now, what I like to do is when I get something like this, and I think this is important, if you try and work with what it gives you, I do believe sometimes when these manufacturers do these things, they kind of set them up how they think they should sound. So there'll be some tech guy there that's thinking, look, this is what it should roughly sound like. So you can tweak it for personal taste, but often try and work with what it is they've given you. You know, that's quite good. Now, if I go into patch settings, which is pretty cool, and then if I decided I didn't want that one on, I could turn it off, or I can turn them on. So I can decide what I want when I turn my when I turn the setting on, which is quite good. So let's just go back, and I can go into any of these. Let's cancel that because I don't want to change it. And then I can go back to edit, and I go back to my screen like that. So I can do that. Now, another good thing is when you often get these things in pedal boards and, you know, predetermined boards when they put the sounds on. What one of the major problems is you go from one patch to another patch. It's like crazy volume differences, which is really annoying. This has actually got a very simple way of setting that up. So I'll just show you that now. Right, hang on. I'm just going to have to work out how to do that because I know it exists. I just can't remember how to do it. Okay, so how you balance the actual overall effect of everything coming out of the amp so you can actually balance the tones up is you simply go to patch settings, and then you can balance up the output of the whole thing. So this will lift the volume going into the amp, so you can set it to whatever you want. So if you need to lift it up a bit, it's a bit quiet, you can. If it's too loud, you can turn it down, so you can balance that. And go back to edit. And that's how that works. Okay, so let's just have a look at a couple of the bits on here then. So what we've got on this one, this is number 5. I quite like this one, pure clean. So it's quite good for just a general sound. Now, what I'll do is when it goes back into this setting, you can actually click on the pedal itself and it comes up with how the pedal is set. So you can tweak that as much as you want. And you can see when they're highlighted, that means that's actually engaged. So what a lot of people are always trying to do is they want the kind of patches that other people have got. Well, this is another really good feature about this, is that if you hit these 3 little buttons here, you can actually export or import or somebody else's file. Or so if you've got someone else has got one, has done a patch, and you think, oh, I'll download that. I think you can download them from their website too. So you can import a patch from somewhere else and import it in, so you can get to see what that sounds like. So that's similar to software to other companies that do that. But I think what's pretty incredible about this is the fact you can do it on something that actually isn't terribly expensive. And also it's a really easy platform to actually operate it, because most of the time with these things, the technology of it is so complicated when you may or may not have, you know, the know-how to do it. It's actually incredibly easy to use, and you can just fiddle about with it. It's the sort of thing where it's easy to put it back to a default setting or reset it. So the technology side of it, they've really thought about that, which I think is a fantastic, you know, gadget for the beginner, or certainly probably the more experienced guitar player, because it's just so easy to use. Okay, so let's have a look at the actual unit itself. So like I said before, I would personally drive the whole thing from your phone or some sort of tablet, or indeed your computer if you want to just use it at home on a desk. So your guitar just goes straight in, goes straight out to wherever you're going to send that. So you're either going to send the information probably to, you know, a normal speaker, you're going to send it to an amplifier, or you're going to send it to an audio interface on your computer, or you might just want to plug your headphones into it. That's entirely up to you. So another great feature about this pedal is that when you actually hold the button in to put the tuner on, the first thing that will do is actually mute the sound of your guitar. So when you hit the strings now, you would hear it just acoustically. Then when you turn that back off after you've tuned it, it will go back to the sound of it. So it's got a handy mute on it. Now, I'm just going to mention this, which is important. Most sounds when you use these pedals change dramatically if you don't get the input and the output stages right. So I tend to play a lot off the volume on my guitar, which is a slight disaster when you use these sort of things, because what you need is maximum information or send coming from the guitar down the cable into the pedal to make the pedal work properly. That's important. So really, you always want the volume up full on your guitar. The tone, I mean, there again, in amps I tend to roll that off, but in these sort of things I would have it up all full, so all the information is coming out of the guitar and you're going to do all the kind of control from the pedal itself. Then what I like to do is to turn the volume up pretty much all the way up, so it's got maximum output coming out of the pedal. You might find, I haven't had this problem, but sometimes when you turn them up all the way, they can get a little bit hissy into, you know, some kind of computer or whatever, you know, it can get like that. So I back mine off a little bit. When you take that into a kind of audio interface or something like one of these speakers, you can actually see the input on the amplifier. If it's going green or yellow, it means it's getting enough signal and it won't actually massively alter the sound. If you are getting a red light, it means you are over sending signal into that channel, which means the actual sound of what it is probably distorting, which might sound great if you like a heavy distortion sound, but what it will do in the end is burn out the piece of equipment, because the input into the channel will just burn out. So that's an important, you know, thing to keep an eye out for. The other output that's worth a mention on this is a USB. I haven't used that. I did set it up briefly on the computer, and you can use that too, but I found it's much easier to use it. I think the technology of it is really designed to use through some kind of tablet or a phone. I didn't have a great lot of success with that, to be honest, so I went back to using it through an app, which is an easy way of doing that. If you decide not to want to adjust it on your phone or on a tablet or so forth, you can actually just click through the presets by clicking the button. Just remember, you can't go back, you can only go forward, so you can only then have to scroll through the whole setting, so that can be a bit annoying. A couple of extra features the pedal's got in itself. It's got an actual drum machine in it, which is pretty good. So you can actually Bluetooth the drum side of it to another device if you've got a speaker or something, so you can connect it via Bluetooth. It's got a metronome on it, which is pretty handy for, you know, if you're going to practice some rhythms or some tempos or anything to a metronome, you can do that. You can tap tempo as well by tapping it, so you can actually build in a tempo if you want to play along with the track. And you can also change from a metronome rock, so you can have different drum kits, which is pretty good. And you can have different drum styles as well, so they've pre-done some of those for you as well. I haven't really messed around with that a lot, but if you want to play along with something yourself and you want to play along with a drummer, you can do that in this app. The other thing that is good about this pedal, which I think they've obviously leaned this more towards the guitar player, but bass player, and they have actually given you some options within this as well if you're a bass player. So There's obviously some bass parts as well. I have actually tried those on the guitar, so I think if you were going to do some recording from it as well, if you send it into an audio interface, you could actually put some bass parts down. So there's plenty of ways you can actually use it for home recording as well, and they are actually, the models actually are quite good. So if you want to play bass on the guitar and use the modeler, it is actually quite good. It's pretty authentic to a bass sound. You'll see at the end also you can actually even build in your own presets, so you could build your own pedals into it if you want. I always like to alter what they've got and tweak it from that, but you can, you've got plenty of options to add as many presets in as you want. Out the box, plug it in, it's brilliant. I don't think you can fault it for the value for money that it is. It's 65 quid. That is extraordinary, to be honest. I am really fortunate. I've used Line 6 stuff and I use a lot of modelling stuff, and this pedal is brilliant. Does it have all the bonuses of a Helix or a Quad Cortex or something like that? No, it's 65 quid. So you can't expect miracles from it. But I think if you want to get into fiddling around or some monitoring, or even if you're going, you want to go in a studio and do, a practice or something like that, it's really good for that. You could just plug this in a PA and it's going to sound pretty good. I can't really fault it. I can't find many faults about it. I mean, the pedal itself is a pretty good weight. It seems to be really well made, so even on the floor like Mini, if you stuck it on a pedal board, I think it would be really good. It runs off a standard 9-volt power supply, so it's going to work on any pedal board, power situation. So that's really good. They've even built in on the bottom of it, which I imagine this, but you can stand it on top of itself, so that's quite a good feature too. The software is super easy to use, so if you are new to fiddling around with software for pedals and things like that, the software is extremely easy to use. And like I said, it's got that added bonus where you can ship information around from one of your mates might have one and you might like his patch, and you can do that, and you can shift that information around. You could take your iPad to a session or something and swap that information around. So that's quite a good feature. One thing someone mentioned to me ages ago about amps and modelling and effects and things like that. I think this is a really good way of using some of these things sometimes. We all buy pedals and we get a pedal and we fiddle around with it. It might not be quite what we're looking for. This is a good way of exploring into different pedals if you want to go out and buy yourself a boutique pedal, like a couple £100 or £100 or something like that. What you can do with these things, and often, usually, when you put the complication of modelling an amp and a speaker, then you put it into an existing amp, which probably a lot of you would do, you'll find you get EQ on top of EQ, which then it just doesn't sound very good. So the way to do it really is to use this thing as like an effects pedal board with all the different models of different choruses, delays, reverbs, auto wire and all the rest of it, but turn the amp setting off so you could then plug it into your existing amp and use it like a pedal board. And if you wanted to, you could tap the effect on and off on the screen if you wanted to do that. So maybe in the future they might want to think about doing some sort of pedal that then you could do that, so you could control it with your feet. But I don't think it's probably designed for that purpose. They'll probably end up doing a bigger, better unit, which you could indeed do that. So then you go down into the realms of something like a Helix or Cortex, but you probably won't get the software. So the technology side of it won't be anywhere near as good as those manufacturers. But then look at the price. The new Helix is about 1,950 quid. So it's a lot more money than that, but it does do a lot more things. So it depends where you're at and what you're trying to achieve with the equipment you're doing. So there again, it goes back to that same old thing where you might think, I'm going for that or I'm looking for that. So you can sort of buy some of these things as a slight experiment. Resale value, I would say it's probably got pretty much no retail value after you've bought it, but it's probably the sort of thing that you probably would never get rid of. You probably just leave it on your bench and plug it in and use it. So, it's not really a waste of money. It's a good investment in your time and your learning. Who's this pedal for? What have they created here? Well, I think they've created a fantastic product at low-end money that kind of works for everybody. I don't know necessarily if you're a bass player, you would probably use one. But for a kind of pro-end guitar player that might want to just go, to a rehearsal, it's quite good for that. You could just plug it in, you know, if you want a cheap pedal board and you want to just do it off your phone, it's quite good for that. Would I gig it? Probably not. Technology wise, you know, you've got to do it off of iPad or an iPhone, bit difficult live. You know, what you could do, of course, is to you know, have it as a preset, so you just don't fiddle with it. That's probably not going to work if you're doing different tunes, things like that. One thing I would mention is that because it's Bluetoothed, if you're connected to a phone or an iPad, you know, it eats the battery on it. It's Bluetooth, so you know, if you need your phone on a gig, you know, or something like that, or even it's going to eat the battery in it. So that's important. I don't know, really. I mean, it's blown me away how good it is for the value it is. I think, you know, it's good for everybody. I mean, for the sake of 65 quid, if you're an enthusiast, you're into guitar, I'd probably buy one for, you know, to mess about with it. Christmas is coming, so, you know, it might be worth a mention on that list. But yeah, I mean, it's absolutely brilliant. So, I mean, I couldn't recommend it more. You know, I think it's fantastic. I've really enjoyed using it over the last couple of weeks. I've used it with students. I've got them to download the app and they can dial in their sounds, you know, or fiddle around with the technology if they're learning a song. I've got it into that. So from a learning point of view, it's really good. And also, you know, if you're trying to learn a song, you can sort of match the sound up on it. So, you know, it's pretty good for that. So I can't really fault it. It's a GJ's best buy, I guess. Thanks very much for tuning into the GJ's channel. If you have enjoyed this video or you are after any more information, please visit our website or drop a comment in the link below. I would say today was an interesting experience because we've had a good fiddle with some technology, which we've thoroughly enjoyed. And actually, Quinn and I are actually freezing because we have had the difficulty of hearing the heater through all our recording equipment today. So we've actually had to turn the heating off. So we're sitting in the studio, and I don't know what the temperature is in here, but I know Quinn over there is wearing a hat. So I've been trying to steal the hat off him all morning to say, but he said it would look bad in the video, so we decided against that. So we'll sign off, and we bring out new videos every week. So we'll look forward to seeing you next week. How's that? Oh, I've forgotten it already.